My name is Thalia Marin. I'm 35, a strategy director at a brand agency in Seattle, and I've spent most of my life being the reliable one, the capable daughter, the one who didn't need much, the one who quietly let her younger sister take the spotlight, the praise, and the last slice of cake, because that's what I was taught love looked like. But nothing prepared me for the moment Lyndon, my own sister, stole my wedding. Not just the date or the venue. She took everything, with my parents' blessing. And my fiancé? He didn't stop her. He watched it happen. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just a family betrayal. This was a setup. I didn't just lose a wedding. I was targeted. And when I finally uncovered the truth, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I took back control, quietly, deliberately, and permanently. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted the most, stay with me. You need to hear what happened next. Growing up in the Marin household meant learning early on that fairness was negotiable and visibility was optional, at least for me. My sister Lyndon was the star, the golden child with big blue eyes and a dramatic flair that kept everyone orbiting around her emotional weather. I was older by 3 years, quieter, more logical. I asked for little and got even less. My achievements, honor roll, scholarships, landing my first job, were met with polite nods. But when Lyndon got a participation ribbon in a middle school art show, my mother threw her a garden party. By the time I was in college, I had made peace with the imbalance. Or so I thought. I carved out a life of independence, moved across the country to build my career in Seattle, and rose through the ranks on nothing but talent and sheer work ethic. I built a world where my worth was measured by strategy decks and client wins, not by how loudly I cried or how many times I failed in front of my parents. Then I met Graham Mercer. I was giving a keynote at a brand symposium in San Francisco when he approached me. Tailored suit, steel gray eyes, and the kind of self-assurance that made the room tilt slightly toward him. Your breakdown of emotional brand equity, he said, was surgical. I'd like to buy you coffee. Or maybe offer you a job. He wasn't joking, but he wasn't pushy either. It felt respectful, curious, but not invasive. I didn't know it then, but that would be his pattern. Give just enough to feel safe, never enough to feel seen. Graham was unlike anyone I dated. Precise, calm, brilliant in the way high-functioning people can be when they've built entire identities out of knowing what everyone wants to hear. We talked about architecture, obscure documentaries, niche vineyards in Oregon. Within 2 months, I was in love. Within 6, we were engaged. He proposed on a private overlook in the Cascades, the sun setting behind us, a photographer he had hired hidden in the trees. The ring was vintage, Art Deco, with a fire that caught the light like it had something to say. I said yes, without hesitation. When I called my parents, my mother's first words weren't, "Congratulations." She said, "Does Lyndon know yet? She's been struggling since her breakup with Kyle." Not exactly the response I'd imagined, but I brushed it off, because for once in my life, I had something that was entirely mine. We booked a venue in Bainbridge. Glass walls, water views, early summer roses. My Pinterest boards bloomed. Linen swatches, calligraphy samples, playlists. I didn't even care that Graham wasn't interested in the details. I figured that was normal. I was used to doing things myself. But the moment I emailed my save the dates, Lyndon called. She was excited, overly so, asked about the caterer, the DJ, even the signature cocktails. I remember thinking, for a woman who usually rolled her eyes at wedding talk, she was suddenly very involved. I didn't see it coming, not yet, but the storm was building. It started with flowers. Lyndon texted me one afternoon, "Peonies and ranunculus? That's such a bold choice. Not very you, though." Not very me? I stared at the screen, confused. I hadn't told anyone, except Graham and my florist, about the flowers. But I dismissed it. Maybe she guessed. Maybe it was a lucky assumption. Then she showed up to my gown fitting. Uninvited. "I happened to be in the neighborhood," she said breezily, as if my tailor was a casual stop between mani-pedis. She offered commentary on the silhouettes I tried, made notes on her phone, and asked the boutique owner if they had this design in a blush tone. I wasn't sure why she was even there. She wasn't in the bridal party. That was intentional. I had chosen friends from work and college, women who'd seen me through career pivots and heartbreaks. I didn't want the emotional weight of navigating sisterhood politics during wedding planning. But under pressure from my mother, I added Lyndon last minute. She just wants to feel included, Mom said. You're always so independent. Try to let her in for once. So I let her in, just a crack, and she walked through like it was her house. And Lyndon began forwarding inspo from wedding blogs, emailing vendors behind my back, and referring to our day in texts. When I asked her to ease off, she laughed and said, I'm just trying to help you not make boring choices. I should have drawn a line right there, but I hesitated, because I didn't want to seem like the jealous sister, the dramatic one, the one who couldn't share. Then Graham began acting strange too. He grew quieter when Lyndon was around, more distracted. Once, I found them talking on the balcony during a family dinner. They went silent when I stepped outside. She was just asking about our honeymoon plans, Graham said. Didn't realize it was classified information. I didn't press. I didn't want to be that woman. Suspicious. Controlling. 2 weeks later, my parents invited us all over for dinner. Nothing unusual, until my mother said there was something important they wanted to discuss. What followed felt like an ambush in slow motion. My father cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact. Thalia, things have changed. Financially, your mother and I, well, we can't support your wedding the way we promised. I blinked. It's fine. We're covering most of it anyway. It was always optional. But, my mother jumped in, Lyndon and Evan just got engaged. I turned to Lyndon, who flashed a sparkling ring I'd never seen before. We're thinking June 15th, she said, smiling. Same venue. It's already all set up. It just makes sense. My fork clattered onto the plate. That's my date, I said flatly. That's my venue. That's my wedding. Yours isn't for another few months, my mother said carefully. There's time to reschedule. No, I said. There's not. I signed the contract, paid the deposits. Technically, your name and Graham's are both on the paperwork, my father murmured. So Evan and Lyndon spoke with the venue coordinator, and they were able to transfer everything. Just like that, stolen, formal wear and flower arrangements and menus, stripped from me and handed to her. I looked at Graham, waiting for outrage. He just shrugged. Maybe it's not worth fighting over, he said. We can always find another venue. My body went cold. Lyndon leaned in, voice sweet as syrup. You can cry later. This day belongs to me now. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about love or family. This was war. For the next few days, I moved like a sleepwalker, answering emails, showing up to work, nodding through meetings, but everything felt muted, disjointed. I kept thinking, they couldn't have done this. Not really, not without realizing what it meant. But the truth was sharper than denial. They didn't care. Or worse, they thought I'd just accept it, like always. I tried to fight back. I called the venue, explained the mistake. It's not a mistake, the coordinator said apologetically. The couple on the contract submitted a written change request. Both names match. Graham had signed it, without telling me. The betrayal burned deeper than anything my family had done. He didn't even try to hide it. I just thought, why escalate things? He said. It's not like the wedding defines the relationship. Except it wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about how little I mattered. Lyndon began posting on Instagram. A countdown. Photos of dresses. Ones nearly identical to the designs I had bookmarked. A caption that read, Dreams come true in the most unexpected ways. She tagged the venue, the florist, even the band I had chosen. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called Rena. She came over with a bottle of Cabernet and a fire in her eyes. This is not a misunderstanding, she said, scrolling through Lyndon's posts. It's theft. Systematic, targeted, manipulative theft. And Graham, don't even get me started on that smirking sociopath. I half laughed, half cried. It's so calculated. She's copying everything, even the first dance song. And Graham, he's not angry, he's calm, like this was always part of the plan. Maybe it was, Rena said darkly. Or maybe they're both getting played. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? Rena hesitated. Do you know how Evan met Lyndon? I shook my head. She said it was random, coffee shop. Rena frowned. And yet he has all the same interests Graham claimed to have, the same obscure hobbies. Even his speech patterns feel familiar. I pulled out my laptop, opened Lyndon's engagement post. Evan stood beside her, a polished man with a charming smile and eyes I hadn't noticed before. Eyes that didn't smile back. Eyes that reminded me of someone else. The next day, I came home early and found Graham gone. His laptop was still on the kitchen counter. His phone buzzed on the table. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The screen lit up with a message. Meeting confirmed. EP bringing the documents. 9 p.m. Wyndham Lobby. EP. Evan Porter? No, not anymore. I grabbed my coat and keys. When I arrived at the hotel, I stayed in the shadows of the lobby bar. It didn't take long. Graham was already seated, flipping through a folder. A man approached. Evan. Or whoever he really was. They shook hands like old colleagues, not like future in-laws. They spoke in hushed tones, exchanging papers, a USB drive. I didn't hear the words. I didn't need to. I saw enough. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a wedding hijack. It was a long game, and I just stumbled onto the center of it. I didn't go home that night. I drove straight to Rena's apartment, heart pounding, skin crawling. When she opened the door, I was already halfway through explaining. They know each other, I said. Graham and Evan, or whoever he is. I saw them at the Wyndham. Papers, USB drives, the whole deal. This wasn't a setup for a wedding. It was a setup for something bigger. Rena didn't ask if I was sure. She just said, "We need help." By morning, we had hired a private investigator, Samuel Herrick, former white-collar crimes unit, now working freelance out of a downtown office that smelled like stale coffee and burned paper. I gave him everything: names, phone numbers, emails, copies of contracts, Graham's business card, and a printed screenshot of Evan's LinkedIn profile. "Give me a few days," he said. "But from what you're describing, I doubt this is just about money. It's about positioning, access." He was right. 3 days later, he called me back. "Your fiancé," he began, "isn't Graham Mercer. His real name is Grayson Keller, former CFO of Apex Holdings. He resigned during a federal audit. Never charged, but the SEC has a sealed report involving misappropriation of investor funds." My stomach twisted. "And Evan?" "Evan Porter doesn't exist either. He's Eli Petroff, former legal counsel at Apex, helped cover Keller's exit. They've worked together before, quietly. Untraceable shell companies, silent capital moves. And now," Herrick continued, "they've rebranded. New names, new cities, new fiancés, but the same goal: financial infiltration." I cross-referenced recent filings. They just launched a new advisory firm together, Porter Keller Capital. "Jesus. Your father's name appeared in their proposal packets," Herrick added. "They're targeting board members at his credit union. If he introduces them, even informally, that opens a gateway. One endorsement, one warm handoff, they're in." It all clicked. The urgency, the sudden engagement, the obsession with wedding logistics. They didn't care about flowers or vows. They wanted my father's network, my family's legitimacy, and I was the access point, or I had been. Now Lyndon was. "That's why they needed to swap the weddings," I whispered. "It wasn't jealousy, it was strategy." Rena nodded slowly. "Lyndon is easier to manipulate, more emotional. She thinks she's winning some petty sisterly game, but she's a pawn. And Grayson, played me to get there." That night, I stared at my reflection for a long time. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I planned. I contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and handed over everything Herrick had compiled. Emails, entity registrations, their meeting at the hotel, Graham's alternate identity, Petrov's legal past, the shell companies. They were interested, but cautious. "We need proof of intent to defraud," said Agent Reynolds. "Ideally, a recorded pitch. something we can trace to money movement or solicitation. I think they're planning to pitch at the rehearsal dinner, I said. There'll be banking executives there, my dad's colleagues. She paused. Can you get us in? I can do better, I replied. I'll be there. I'll wear a wire. Rena looked horrified when I told her. That's dangerous. No, I said quietly. What's dangerous is letting them walk away and ruin more lives. I've been the quiet daughter, the reasonable one, my whole life. Not anymore. The game had changed, and this time, I wasn't the target. I was the trap. June 15th. The day that should have been mine. Instead of walking down the aisle, I walked into Lakeside Ridge, wearing a navy sheath dress and a calm expression that masked everything underneath. Clipped to my collar was a brooch. Simple, elegant, and wired. The FBI agents waited outside in an unmarked sedan. My part was simple. Get the recording. The venue looked breathtaking, because I had designed it that way. The flowers, the lighting, even the soft jazz floating through the air, it was all mine, and now it was hers. Lyndon sparkled in her white rehearsal dress, playing the perfect bride-to-be. My parents greeted me with restrained politeness, clearly unsure if I was there to behave or explode. I did neither. I watched. Grayson, was already handing out his investment folders to my father's banking friends. Evan, or Eli, stood beside him like a well-rehearsed echo. During dinner, I waited. They smiled. I smiled back. Then Evan rose, clinking his glass. Before dessert, I'd like to say a few words. Not just about love, but about legacy. Some of you have received materials about Porter Keller Capital. I stood. Before you invest, I said clearly, you need to know who you're dealing with. Gasps broke through the room as I walked to the AV table. With one click, my laptop illuminated the screen behind me. Grayson Keller, formerly Graham Mercer. SEC investigation. Apex Holdings. Slide 2. Eli Petrov, a.k.a. Evan Porter. Legal counsel for Apex. No longer licensed. Whispers turned to murmurs. Chairs scraped. My father looked stunned. These men orchestrated this wedding, I said, to gain access to my family's network. This isn't about love, it's about money. Graham's voice was low, measured. Thalia, let's not do this here. You already did. More slides followed. Company registrations, email exchanges. One even listed Lyndon's name as a leverage asset. She turned pale. You used me, she whispered, eyes locked on Evan. He didn't deny it. The doors burst open. Agent Reynolds entered with two others, badges raised. Grayson Keller, Eli Petrov. You're under investigation for securities fraud and wire fraud. Please come with us. Grayson tried to protest. Evan didn't move. The room turned to chaos. I stood still. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. My father leaned against the wall. Lyndon sat down slowly, bouquet slipping from her hand. You knew, she said, barely audible. I tried to tell you, I replied. Silence settled like ash, the wreckage of what could have been, but also what was saved. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. In the days that followed, everything unraveled. The wedding was canceled. The venue quietly scrubbed Lyndon's name from their calendar. News of the FBI investigation spread through my father's banking circles like wildfire. He stepped down from the credit union board within the month. My mother stopped calling altogether. Lyndon disappeared for a while. Some friend's lake house, I heard. She left behind a trail of silence and shame. She never apologized, not at first, not directly. But weeks later, a letter arrived in thick ivory paper. Her handwriting, unmistakable. I don't expect forgiveness, it began. But I finally see it. I see what I've done. And more importantly, I see what I let myself become. It wasn't an excuse, it was recognition. And that mattered more than I expected. Grayson, pleaded guilty. 5 years in federal prison. Evan, or Eli, took a deal. 3 years and restitution neither of them could pay. Their scam had nearly reached the finish line, and I had stopped it. I moved out of the apartment we once shared, sold the ring, took a job offer in Portland. Smaller firm, slower pace, but it gave me something I hadn't had in a long time, peace. I decorated my new apartment with soft things. Linen curtains, wooden shelves, a small herb garden on the balcony. No one's taste but mine. Some nights I still think about it all. How close I came to marrying a man who saw me as a gateway, not a partner. How easily my family offered me up, again, for someone else's gain. But those thoughts pass faster now. I'm learning that healing isn't a perfect arc. It's messy, sometimes quiet, sometimes sharp. But it's forward. Always forward. And for the first time in my life, I'm not building my identity around who I am to someone else. I'm just Thalia. Not the older sister, not the forgotten daughter, just me. And that's more than enough. My name is Celandine Rowe, and I was the forgotten one. At Christmas dinner last year, everyone in my family received beautifully wrapped gifts. Except me. It wasn't a mistake. No one gasped, no one apologized. They just moved on, like my empty hands weren't even worth noticing. But I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. Because what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I had already given myself the best gift of all. Not just a new home, not just a six-figure bonus from one of the most respected tech firms in the country. What I gave myself was something they could never take back, the power to walk away from people who never saw me. And that night, I finally used it. I grew up in a house that praised golden boys and ignored quiet girls. My brother Grant was the golden boy. Star quarterback, prom king, early acceptance to Stanford. He walked into every room like it owed him applause, and usually it gave it. I was the background, not the disappointment, not the rebel. Just forgettable. My earliest memory of being invisible was at age 10, when Grant got a brand new bike and I got socks. My mom said it was because girls don't ride bikes anyway. But I did. I rode the neighbor's hand-me-down after she threw it out, until the tires burst. Things didn't get better with age. At 13, I sat silently on the stairs, while my parents and my brother celebrated his latest report card. Straight A's, of course. I had straight A's, too. But no one asked, no one noticed. And when I did speak, it was like tossing words into a black hole. By 16, I had stopped trying to belong. I poured myself into books, into coding, into understanding how systems worked. Because at least systems made sense. At school, I joined the tech club, not because it was cool, but because it was mine. The logic, the rules, the control. It gave me something I never had at home, stability. Then came the Thanksgiving dinner from hell. My father stood up to toast Grant's entrepreneurial spirit and vision. He was launching a business funded entirely by our parents. My mother beamed. Then she turned to me and added, "We just hope Celandine finds a steady job, maybe something safe, like clerical work." And Uncle chuckled. "I hear the deli down the street is hiring cashiers." The whole table laughed. I didn't. Because that week, I had just received a full scholarship to one of the top tech programs in New York City. Tuition, housing, stipend, all covered. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not because I was hiding it, but because I knew it wouldn't matter to them. I left home a month later with a single suitcase and a silent promise. I will never come back to beg for their approval. They hadn't seen me in years, and I was going to make sure that when they did, they wouldn't recognize the woman I had become. New York didn't welcome me. It swallowed me whole. I landed in the city with a scholarship and a suitcase full of hand-me-downs. My dorm room was barely larger than a closet, and my first night there, I cried into a borrowed pillow. The walls were thin. Someone next door was blasting music. Another person was vomiting in the hallway. It wasn't the dream. It was the grind. But the grind suited me. I took classes during the day and cleaned hotel rooms at night. Weekends were for tutoring underclassmen in Python or troubleshooting laptop issues for extra cash. I didn't party. I didn't date. I worked. I worked because I knew the only way to outrun the version of me they had written off was to become someone they could no longer afford to ignore. And slowly, I did. By junior year, I was interning at a cybersecurity firm downtown. I was the only woman on the floor, the only one under 30, and the only person who didn't ask for help. I figured things out myself. They respected that. By the end of the summer, they offered me a part-time job to stay on while I finished school. I accepted, and I never looked back. I moved out of the dorms and into a shared apartment with two other women in Brooklyn who were also clawing their way into something better. Rent was brutal, the heat barely worked, and we had to take turns plunging the bathroom sink. But it was ours. For the first time in my life, I belonged somewhere. Graduation came with honors, job offers, and no one in the crowd cheering for me, except for my two roommates, who held up a sign made out of a pizza box. Go Celandine, go build the damn thing. And I did. I joined the same firm full-time and rose fast. Too fast, maybe. I wasn't trying to climb the ladder. I was building my own. My code became essential to the firm's infrastructure. When a major bank was hacked in early 2020, I designed the patch. When a government contractor needed a custom security suite, I built it from scratch. By 28, I was making six figures. By 30, I was leading projects. And by 31, I closed a multi-year licensing deal with a European financial firm that paid me a bonus large enough to make my bank account blink twice before confirming it had gone through. I didn't call home. I didn't tell them. Not because I was petty. Because I had learned. Their silence was never about distance. It was about disinterest. They didn't ask. So I stopped offering. Instead, I took a piece of that bonus and bought a condo in Boston. 2 bedrooms, minimalist design, stainless steel everything, and floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city's skyline feel like part of the furniture. I moved in mid-December, a week before Christmas. My friends came over with Thai takeout and cheap wine, and we sat on the floor because I hadn't bought furniture yet. Someone gave me a candle shaped like a dragon, and another gifted a mug that read, "Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're weak." We toasted to new beginnings. Lisa, my loudest and kindest friend, raised her glass and said, "To Celandine, the quiet one who roared." I smiled, not because I needed the praise, but because I needed the reminder. And that's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marla, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. "Hey," it read, "your mom wants to know if you'll come home for Christmas." I stared at it for a long time. Not come visit, not we miss you, just come home. I showed it to Lisa. "You going?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, but later that night, standing by the window with the skyline stretching out in front of me, like a secret I'd kept too long, I whispered the truth out loud. "I think I have to." Not because they deserved it, but because I needed to see with my own eyes what I'd left behind and what I'd become. I drove up to Massachusetts Avenue in the early morning mist, the kind that makes everything look like it's holding its breath. The 6-hour drive felt shorter than expected, maybe because I was rehearsing what I'd say, or maybe because I knew I wouldn't say any of it. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Sagging gutters, paint peeling around the windows, weeds curling over the driveway like they'd claimed it. There was still a plastic Santa on the roof, the same one from when I was 12, only now it was missing a boot. I stood on the porch with my overnight bag in one hand and a tin of cookies I'd picked up out of obligation in the other. My hand hovered over the doorbell longer than I'd admit. When I finally pressed it, the chime sounded tired. Fitting. The door opened to my mother's face, surprised, then studied, then stiffly polite. "Well," she said, "you look different." "I am," I replied. She pulled me into a one-armed hug that lasted exactly 1 second longer than necessary. Inside, the house smelled exactly the same, like lemon polish, old upholstery, and disappointment. The living room was full. Cousins, uncles, people I hadn't seen since I left. Conversation stopped as I stepped in, like someone had turned down the volume. A voice from the kitchen broke the silence. "Hey, look who's here!" Grant, of course. He came out beaming, one arm around his wife's shoulders, the other gesturing to her swollen belly. "Everyone, this is Mia. Your future niece or nephew's in there," he said, patting her stomach. Polite applause. I offered a smile. "Congratulations." "Still working with computers or whatever?" he asked, voice light but laced with condescension. "I work in cybersecurity," I replied. "Enterprise-level AI defense." He let out a low whistle. "Wow! Still doing the techie basement thing, huh?" I didn't respond, didn't need to. Dinner was announced with a clap from my mother. Let's eat before it gets cold. Celandine, your old room is now Grant's office, so we've made up the couch for you. Of course they had. We sat down for dinner. I was placed at the end of the table, next to the kitchen door, practically in the hallway. I didn't complain. I didn't say anything at all. Grant held court like always, explaining some vague startup idea involving revolutionary media architecture. It was all buzzwords and ego. I just need the capital to launch, he said. 200,000 should get us rolling. My father nodded. We'll figure something out. My mother patted his hand. Family helps family. I chewed a forkful of overcooked turkey and said nothing. After dinner, my mom handed me a scratchy blanket and gestured to the couch. I lay there under the flicker of the hallway light, listening to their laughter upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Christmas morning came like a scene out of a commercial. Mia and Grant bounded down the stairs, tearing into presents with glee. Boxes were stacked high, ribbons flew, everyone oohed and awed over the gifts I'd brought, carefully selected, personalized, and wrapped with handwritten notes. Then it came to my turn, except it didn't. Oh no, my mother said, far too loudly. Celandine, we completely forgot. Grant laughed. Just like the good old days. Don't cry this time, sis. And that was it. Something inside me stilled. Not rage, not hurt, just clarity. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single item, my keys. The brushed steel caught the morning light. What's that? My dad asked. The keys to my apartment, I said. I closed on it last week. 2-bedroom condo in Boston. Hardwood floors, built-in smart security system, fully paid off. The room went silent. You bought an apartment? My mother blinked. With what money? My job, I said. My company licensed a security framework I built. The bonus was $160,000 after taxes. Forks paused mid-air. Grant's jaw twitched. Mia stopped smiling. My dad leaned forward. You've been making that kind of money? For years. My mother's tone shifted instantly. Sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? We're so proud of you. Proud? For a moment, I almost laughed, but I didn't. I should pack, I said instead. I've got a long drive back. They protested. My mother begged me to stay for brunch. My father said we hadn't even talked about my exciting career. But I had seen enough, and they had shown me everything I needed to know. I came downstairs with my bag still unzipped and my resolve zipped tight. They were waiting for me, my parents, standing just beyond the threshold of the living room, arms folded, smiles too polished to be genuine. Grant and Mia flanked them, trying and failing to look casual. Before you go, my father began, we wanted to talk to you about something important. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Grant stepped forward like a man doing me a favor. This startup I've been building, it's really close to taking off. Just needs a little push. Capital mostly. How much? I asked. He smiled, cocky as ever. 200,000. That would get us rolling. My mother nodded eagerly. It's an investment, honey. You'd be helping family. Yeah, Grant added. With what you're making, it's nothing. You said you got that big bonus, right? And there it was. The reason they suddenly remembered I existed. I looked around that room, the same room where I used to sit on the floor while Grant opened his brand new gadgets and I got thrift store cast-offs. The same room where not 24 hours ago they forgot to get me a Christmas gift. No, I said plainly. It landed like a slap. My mother's face froze. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not giving you $200,000, or $2, or 2 cents. But we're family, my dad said, like the word still meant something. I laughed, just once. Not bitterly, just truthfully. You mean now we're family? Silence. Where was that family? I continued. When I asked for help covering textbooks and you told me to take out loans. When you turned my bedroom into an office before I even left for college. When you told me I could sleep on the couch while Grant got a car and a tuition check. That was different, my mother snapped. Things were tight back then. I nodded slowly, but not tight for Grant. He showed promise, she said too quickly, then backpedaled. I mean, we thought college might not be the right fit for you. No, I said. You just assumed I wasn't worth the risk. Grant stepped forward, puffed up like he was still wearing a high school Letterman jacket. Unbelievable. You make it big and suddenly think you're better than us. I don't think I'm better, I said. I think I'm finally done pretending we were ever equal. You selfish brat, he spat. After all we've done for you. For me? I snapped. You mean tolerating me while worshiping Grant? You mean throwing jokes at my expense at every dinner table? You mean forgetting me every holiday and pretending it was some innocent slip-up? My mother's voice was shrill now. We gave you a roof, food. Parenting, I said coldly. Not charity, and you made sure I knew I was never wanted. My hand tightened around my suitcase handle. I turned toward the door. Don't walk out like this, my dad said. We're just trying to build something. You already did, I replied. You built a hierarchy, and I just stopped trying to climb it. I stepped outside into the cold, crisp air. Behind me, they shouted after me, about regrets, about forgiveness, about family. None of it mattered. By the time I hit the highway, my phone was buzzing every few minutes. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from numbers I didn't recognize but knew too well. Words like ungrateful, selfish, cold, flung like confetti at a party I'd never RSVP'd to. At a gas station just past the state line, I scrolled through them all, then blocked every number I didn't care to hear from again. Except Sarah. When I got back to my apartment in Boston, it was quiet, peaceful. I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the skyline blink like the city was breathing with me. Sarah texted, Mom's telling everyone you refuse to help, that you've changed. Good, I replied. Maybe now they'll stop pretending I ever owed them anything. A day later, the cousins came. Family is everything, one message read. You should support your brother. Delete, block. Another said, Wow, you're cold. Maybe, but cold is what you become when you're tired of being burned. It's been 7 months since that Christmas. 7 months since I walked out of the house where I was raised and never looked back. Since then, life hasn't just moved forward, it's unfolded. I was promoted in March, head of engineering. The title didn't matter as much as what came with it. A team that respects me, creative freedom, and a compensation package that would have made my teenage self think I was dreaming. That same month, I met Elliot at a tech conference in Cambridge. He was quiet, like me, but steady. A freelance designer who understood the chaos of startups and, more importantly, the silence that follows a toxic family. We got coffee, then dinner. Then we didn't stop. Elliot doesn't ask for pieces of me I'm not willing to give. He doesn't try to fix me. He sees me, and that's enough. Sarah still calls every week, not because she has to, but because she wants to. She keeps me updated, though I rarely ask. Apparently, Grant and Mia are still living with my parents. The startup never got off the ground. The story my family tells now is simple. I abandoned them. I turned my back. I let money ruin me. It's easier, I guess, than admitting the truth. I was never theirs to lose. They tried reaching out through every channel, old friends, distant cousins, even former teachers. I blocked each attempt, each guilt trip disguised as concern. My mother left a voicemail a month ago. Her voice trembled as she said, Family is forever, Celandine. I didn't respond. Because I've learned, forever only applies when it's mutual, not when it's conditional, not when it only kicks in once you've become useful. Elliot and I are planning a trip to Japan. We've been learning the language together, bookmarking noodle spots and old shrines. Sometimes, when we talk about the future, he asks what I'd name a dog if we got one, or if I'd ever consider leaving Boston for good. The thought doesn't scare me, not anymore. This city gave me space to grow. But now, I know that what mattered wasn't the city, it was me. I've stopped mourning the family I never really had. And I've started building something better, something chosen, something whole. To anyone listening who's felt the sting of being overlooked, forgotten, dismissed, please hear me when I say this. You do not have to stay where you're unseen. You are not selfish for choosing peace. and you don't need anyone's permission to live the life you deserve. So walk away if you need to, run if you must. Build a life that reflects your worth, not their expectations. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't "I forgive you." It's, "I'm done." And when you say it like you mean it. Because peace isn't found in their acceptance, it's found in your own.